Well, welcome to Luz de Jesus Gallery, and Luz de Jesus is now celebrating its 31st year. You see in the walls in the show in the front room here, Harold Fox, who's shown with us several times before. We often pair him with the coaster show in the other room, and he's done very well. If you look, you'll see a lot of red dots under the title cards, under all these paintings, and that means that he sold quite a few of the pieces. I think there's only a handful left in this particular show. It's kind of cool to be in this room because this is the original new location of Luz de Jesus, and after 2010 we put up a solid wall in the back to give a second space, which gave us a gray wall gallery in the front and a white wall gallery in the back, which gives us the ability to showcase two completely different shows and exhibitions at the same time without competing with ourselves time-wise. What we're looking at in this room is the coaster show, and while the gallery's roots go back about 31 years, the shop's roots go back about 46. This show is 5 years old, and it was an idea that sort of happened out of necessity, and that we had a show that was dropped from a major artist, and September is the new art month, so everybody wants to have their show in that September time slot. But we realized that it's really difficult for a gallery our size to get credit, in local newspapers and in national magazines or any kind of press, really. And so we sort of came up with a safeguard, that a friend of mine came in and was connected to doing an event with the L.A. Beer Week, and I asked him if he had made coasters, and he said he had, and so I said, let's do a coaster show. And so 5 years in, this is what it looks like. It's a wall full of dots. There's just under 1,000 pieces in here. You get that great mosaic of circles. They're all equally spaced. And then a few years ago, we started allowing in square coasters. They just had to be the same size. They'd be 4 inches. And so these circles transform themselves into squares as they work their way around the room again, and creates a nice environment. So this coaster here by Adnohia is significant because Adnohia just got accepted into the Danish National Museum for a piece of jewelry that she created, and this is an example of the coaster show really embracing different styles, because you wouldn't think of a jeweler necessarily as a gallery artist. And when working with something as, kind of lowbrow as a beer coaster, it really is a whole different take. And you can see also that because it's such an architectural rendering, it kind of gives you a little bit of background to the fact that she was a Sci-Arc graduate and has her master's degree in architecture. But rather than building houses and structures, she really does focus on making very unusual and very beautiful jewelry. And this cluster of coasters here is by Detroit artist Glenn Barr. And Glenn Barr is really one of the forefront of that second wave of lowbrow artists who really sort of benefited from the new nomenclature of pop surrealism. Glenn has become a very internationally recognized artist, and the fact that we're able to get some coasters for this show, and as inexpensively as these are, really does give collectors this great chance to feature work from an astoundingly popular person in their own personal collection affordably, and that's part of that whole egalitarian aspect of what we do at Luz de Jesus. Now, the Panic Collective are very interesting. The Panic Collective are a collective of international artists from Japan and America and China and England. And this particular piece features actual counterfeit currency that was attempted to be spent here at Luz de Jesus and was actually confiscated, and the police were called. And what happened is that, you don't want to keep counterfeit currency. So rather than destroy it, one of the collective members who was employed here asked to keep it, to cut it, and to make art out of it for the coaster show. So there's a grid pattern of armed bars put in front of the White House, which I'm sure is a statement about the current administration and crony capitalism. But they're another internationally recognized collective. They usually only show in museums, but they've done the coaster show, I think, 3 years out of the 5 that we've done it. And quite often it's high concept. And when you can get a Panic Collective piece for, what's this one price, $55, as opposed to like a $6,000 to $10,000 painting, that again allows people who might not have a budget to collect at a blue chip level to get a very cogent piece from well-known artists. These pieces here by Jeff Gillette are probably the least recognizable as actual coasters. And what we do with Jeff is, since he's using found objects, and these pieces here were all gathered from trash that he found in India, usually along the Ganges and in one of the major cities, and I think these are from Bombay or Mumbai, that he's probably best known to people who are perhaps less familiar with this particular art scene as someone who was included in the Banksy Dismaland show. So when Banksy brought together a group of international artists, Jeff Gillette was one of them, and several of his sort of decrepit Disneyland paintings were featured in that show. So these pieces, 3 of the 4 are actually still available, and they're priced $250 each. So again, kind of bargain prices for an artist as recognized as Jeff Gillette, and whose provenance extends, in that direction with Banksy and other very important contemporary artists. As you can see here, one of the artists actually took the store itself as inspiration for their coasters. So you've got La Luz de Jesus, the ride, as though it's a kind of amusement park, and then the Wacko coaster below it, featuring both logos for the shop and the gallery. While there's always been a certain amount of support for Billy Shire and his shops of Wacko and So Plant, La Luz de Jesus, there's also a hesitancy in L.A., as there is almost any place, and maybe even more so on the East Coast, of a been there, done that feel. And people don't realize that we are constantly evolving and constantly changing. And so when you think about the origin of this place going back to 1971 and going to Melrose after starting down the street, a little closer to Echo Park, but still in Los Feliz, that when we hit Melrose in the early 80s and started the gallery in 86, and when I came to work here in 1991, that Melrose became hip Melrose because this was the hub, right at the corner of Melrose and Martel. If you were a kid, you'd have your parents drop you off in that corner so you could go in and shop at Wacko and So Plant, La Luz de Jesus, and then wander down the streets to see what other shops there were. And when we came out here in 1995 to Los Feliz, it really helped to jumpstart the renaissance of this neighborhood as well. Now we're very connected to this neighborhood. We've got Barnsdall Art Park up on the New Hampshire quarter of Hollywood Boulevard, and we've got the new Silver Lake Conservatory of Music across the street. So, having this many creative people in an environment that I think already has influenced that next generation of creatives makes perfect sense to me.